Good morning, and welcome to Winnipeg. It is just starting to get light outside Winnipeg. And today is going to be really different, especially for me. First of all, in probably about half an hour or so, I got to jump in the car and go and pick up my grocery order that I put in online last night. And then I got to get back here and repackage the perishables. Like I buy in bulk, instead of buying just 1 pound of ground beef or 1 kilogram, however you want to call it. I'll buy the large family pack or whatever they call it. The club pack, I think President's Choice or the store I go to calls it. And so I'll buy the club pack, and then I'll divide it up into about 6 pieces, and I'll put it individually into little baggies, and then I'll freeze it. So I got to do that. I got a bunch of that kind of stuff coming. And also, I think a lot of you know what's going to happen this morning at 10 o'clock, all being well. Our friend Gabe is coming. So that's why I'm trying to set up here a little different. We're going to do the 2-camera thing. My hope is that I'll be able to put this lens on that camera and have everything set to autofocus and stuff like that. And I'll be trying stuff that I haven't done before, so I hope it doesn't turn out to be a disaster. However, I don't think it will. My plan is Gabe is gonna sit here, and I'm gonna sit back here and cut my sleeve on this clamp here. It scared me for a minute. I thought, what am I breaking now? Anyway, I'm going to sit back here, and hopefully I'm going to be able to sort of zoom in on what he's doing here. And that's the plan. I got to remember to switch my camera there to the big memory card. Or we'll have the same problem we had last time. Okay, there's not a whole lot more I can say here this morning. It's our walkers should be coming by in probably about 10 minutes, all being well. And we'll see at the end of the day if they did and what kind of sunrise we had. It's kind of, I don't know, it's a little bit cloudy. We may not get a sunrise today that we can see, that is. Okay, I got a lot of cleaning up to do here. Everything is pretty much the same way as it was when I finished off here yesterday. Let's not waste a whole lot of time talking. Let's get ourselves ready and go pick up our groceries. And I guess the next time you see me, all being well, Gabe should be right here with us.
Now, just a little bit of a disclaimer going on here. Gabe did fine, but my camera work, well, it left a little bit to be desired. But I think you're going to be able to get the gist of it.
Well, here we are. Remember last time I saw you, I said, next time you see us, Gabe will be with us. Well, here's Gabe. Thank you for coming again.
You're welcome. Hello, everybody.
And before we get going, my intention had been to stick one of the figures together for our U-boat. And this morning I was sitting here and I was looking at them, and the numbers on the sprue do not match up with the numbers on the instructions. In other words, this says, for instance, E2. Well, there's no E sprue. I think they start out like XYZ or something. So if anybody knows what's going on there, I'm sure that there's somebody out there that is, already done this. In the comments below, I'd appreciate it. What you found was the right way to go about this. But anyway, this is not about me. I guess I was just sort of explaining why it is I don't have any figures glued together. But fortunately, Gabe has brought his own stuff. And I'm going to just sort of turn the floor over to Gabe, and he's going to do his thing.
Well, thank you. And again, hello to everybody. I wanted to answer some of the things that I read in the comments. And so one of the things that people have talked about is how do you, they want to mass produce. So you're going to make like 48 some odd figures, and painting one at a time is not efficient. So mass producing them, so you'll do some kind of thing, because a lot of them will have similar colors, and so I just wanted to show some tricks that. So this is from a hobby of mine, that if anyone's heard of the game Warhammer, so they're tabletop battles, and so here are a bunch of soldiers, for the lack of a better word, and these are in the process of being painted up. And so they are on bases. That's how the game is played. They're on bases. And what this is a piece of foam core. So just an old poster I had. I sliced into strips that were manageable. And then I put double-sided tape along it. And these fellows get plunked down on the double-sided tape. And I, pardon me. And I then primed them here. And they stay there, and I open up yellow, you can see, and I'll just go through and paint all the yellow, and then I'll open up the blue and do all the blue, and just go on and on. And you can see I have several of these set up, because I think that there's like 40 of these guys. I just brought 2 of them. So just to show you that that's a way that you can manage painting lots of figurines at a time. Holding figurines is another thing, and so there's a couple of things that I've used. This is probably the oldest holder that I've ever bought, and it's a spring-loaded little clamp, and so it is made for anything with a base. Fits perfectly in here. I'm not too sure if you could fit smaller characters like a foot or something in there. It would be too awkward. So anyhow, but this is just another way to hold them, so you can maneuver and paint and pick out the places that you want to paint, and then set them down without having them fall over and the like. And there are other things. The company Games Workshop that creates those guys would love to sell you a $25 or $30 holder. Or if you go online, you can find someone who's designed one for an FDM printer. So this is just a clamp. It's the same idea. And let's just get this fellow out of here. And this, instead of being a nice spring-loaded, construction, is just elastic bands. And oops. And of course, there we go. And so now you've got a nice, it really is quite nice to hold and paint. So there's another way you can hold a figurine and paint it at the same time. So that's nice. And so because it's 3D printed, I produced like 6 or 7 of these, and so that's a nice way to. And you can also just set them down to dry. So I have 6 of these, I can be painting 6 figures at a time, and by the time I get to the last one, I can go back to the first one because it's dry and start on another color. Today I just wanted to show some of the setup and tools, which I did last time, but I'll just sort of repeat the process. I always have water handy, and one is soapy, and I just use hand soap. Liquid hand soap. You could use detergent like dish detergent, and then one totally clean. And you make a point of never putting any kind of dirty brush in this. I actually have a container that has 3 wells, and one is soap, one is quick rinse, and the other one is if I need water to thin something, I have to have that pristine. So I use that. I have an arrangement of different paints here that I'm going to use. There's actually 4 different types of paint, and not makes, but types of paint. So the one I use the most on figurines, especially smaller figures, you get a better 3D effect, are these. They're called speed paints, and they've got funky names, and they are actually a one-coat shot, and it's actually a paint. I believe it's an acrylic-based paint. It's has a resin in it, so it pools in low areas in a model. And when you have a small model, to get a good shading or 3D depth to it, it's kind of hard because it's tiny, so the shadows are really light. But this sort of helps you do that. So this is, and I think I mentioned the last time I was here, this has revolutionized a lot of painting. You can make very nice effects and nice work by this. One shot, one coat, and you let it do the work, and it looks like you've spent lots of time shading and highlighting and all these other things, which you haven't. So, but you tell them you did. The other paint is just a standard acrylic. I use water-based. So this is just a water-based acrylic. I have white handy because the one thing about those speed paints and the resin is that they're transparent, but they stain. So if you get it on a part that you don't want, you pretty well have to erase it by covering it with white. So this is just a white acrylic. This is your standard type model paint, and thin it with water if you want. Generally you do thin. And Ron has gone through about thinning paints and how it does a shrink wrap effect, and that's important. And then this is just another brand of acrylic right here. Just a different color, a different company, but the same idea. And I really do love the dropper bottles. They're much easier. I use a palette, and I've got two different types of palettes. I got a well palette, and I use that mostly with the resin paints, and because the resins, when I put them on my wet palette, tend to spread around quite a lot, and I don't like what it does to the palette, so I keep them contained in a well. And then the other paint is a wash, and I use this every once in a while. So this is basically just a thin down paint, but it's formulated a little bit differently, and it kind of does the work of speed paints. But the speed paints manage on their own to go into crevices and things like this. But if you are painting just with acrylics, painting them and then overwashing with this gives nice effects. It's very much like panel liner in terms of consistency, and it kind of does the same thing in terms of highlighting crevices and the like. And you get some nice work with flesh wash. Well, this is a flesh wash, but I've got a whole series of washes. I just wanted to show that to you. There's another company that's well known. This is actually the company that produces those figurines I showed you earlier. And this is these pots I don't like. I can't tell you how many times I've knocked one over. They open up. They tend to get, now this is a wash, much like the previous one. They get a lot of paint stuck on this little lip here, and it's a mess. And it also dries out, so you have to either transport drops of this to your palette or whatever. But people have actually been pouring these into droppers because the droppers are so much more superior. There are other things that I use when I paint, and one of the nice things is you can highlight something that's metallic. So most acrylics are flat. So you paint it and everything's flat, but say someone's holding something shiny like a camera lens or the like. Well, you can, these are two different varnishes, and this one called Ard Coat is gloss. And so you can actually pick out and make things look glossy. So for instance, going back to our soldier here, so his gun barrel, if you want it to be shiny, you just go over it with just the brush and a little bit of gloss varnish. And if something looks glossy and you don't want it to be glossy, you go over it with matte varnish. So I always have varnishes around, and I actually finish all my models in varnish. They almost always, I usually use a spray, but you don't need to. I painted on as well, and or brushed on. And varnishes protect your work, so they won't chip and these are figurines made to be used, like on a tabletop. So I varnish them when I'm done, and just a spray varnish, but usually a matte varnish because most of the model is matte. But then you want a sword or a gun to be shiny, so you pick it out with some gloss varnish. Then priming. So I have here. This is how you can also help out priming something. And I think I mentioned this last time. So this is just another Warhammer character. I've actually started with a little bit of flesh paint on him and put him aside. So this was actually primed in black originally. So if you look under the belly there, you see it looks very dark, and it's actually hard to distinguish whether that's black or not, or is it the shadows of the model. So to accentuate shadows on a small figurine, this is another technique. It's called zenithal highlighting. Zenith meaning from above. So what you do is you spray black. You can use gray if you don't want such deep shadows, but you do a darker color, and then you take white, and thanks to Ron, I have actually pulled out an airbrush that I bought many years ago. It's still shrink wrapped, and I started using it, and I'm loving it. And I'm now using airbrush quite a bit, thanks again to watching Ron and using your airbrush. I says, okay, I'm going to do it. And so anyhow, with airbrush, if you look from above, it looks almost white. So that's what you do, is you just spray from above. And that is how you get sort of the upper highlights. And then, again, you can get close in with your airbrush, and if you want parts that didn't get, usually the face, because it's under a visor in this case, would have been very dark, so you can go right in and give that an extra white to make it stand out. Okay, so that's priming. These are flat primed, so you don't need to do that zenithal. And I'm just going to show you the new characters that I printed up, especially for this little project here. And should be recognizable. And if you look carefully, you will see a familiar face. And this is my rendition of Ron working on a U-boat. I gave him an officer's cap and the camera and mug of coffee. I switched into either a swab or a holder downer or a pointer and a magnifier, and the idea is that, well, he's an engineer on the ship. He can check into crevices and look for details, and so that is created in a program called Hero Forge. And Hero Forge is I mentioned before, it's like the most intricate Mr. Potato Head. You pick and choose pieces, you pick and choose shapes, you've got a little bit of leeway here and there, but you assemble a character. And so that, when Ron mentioned it'd be nice to have one of him on the model, and he says, but a digital camera and didn't seem to fit, so I figured, we'll create one of these for him. So there's that. And it's been primed just white. And of course, that same program has introduced mounts. And this is my rendition of Ron on a motorbike. And so hopefully over the winter you can check this out, and then pine for the spring when you get your bike and get it out on the roads. So I'm going to go through just some painting of the two Ron figurines here. And it's nice to have more than one when you're painting, because if you're going through the bother of prepping a paint and maybe thinning it or mixing colors, I'm not planning to mix any colors, but if you have a couple, then as one is drying, you can flip to the other one and use the same paint on there. So I'll show you a little bit of that. And I'm primarily going to use the speed paints, which are very easy to use, and so that's the plan here. The last thing is, when you're using speed paints, if you want to thin them, you can use water, but I find that it just gets kind of like wimpy. So you can actually get the medium that they use to thin out the paint. So I'll be probably using a bit of this as well, but you can use water. For everything here, you can always use water to thin. And that's a nice feature because you don't have to worry about running out of thinners and the like, even though you use very little. But it's just one of those things, and it's got like zero smell to it. Okay.
Just a question here.
Yeah.
After this dries, if you will the water rehydrate it so that you can, like if the paint dries and you were to get it on something and you want to take it off later, how do you get it off?
Generally, if it's quick and it still hasn't fully set, I can quickly get a good old swab and dip it in water. I've got soapy water handy and clean water, so I can very quickly rub it out, and I have done that on occasion. If it's something you've changed your mind and it's dried for a day or two, you could try this. It's probably not going to work. The older speed paints, these are actually speed paint 1 that I brought, but I've got speed paint 2. The problem was whenever they touched, they would rehydrate, and people were getting frustrated with, I've painted this nice area, and as soon as the other one comes near, they start bleeding into each other. And so speed paint 2 is not as rehydratable, but you can try using the medium again to try and get that off. Generally, we get plain white acrylic paint, and you paint over it and erase it and let this dry. And that basically you cover it, you don't erase it. And there's also a metallic paint here. I don't use metallics that often, but when I do, metallic paints, a lot of people get very picky about mixing the water, even that, like the cleaning water that I have. If you're using metallics and regular acrylics, the metallics are made metallic because they got a very fine aluminum powder in it, and it's kind of like glitter. And if you've ever been anywhere near glitter, like kids' projects or what have you, it gets everywhere. And so the people who are really picky about their painting or using it for competitions and the like will never mix the water even with from that you've used the metallic with. I'm not quite that picky. If you have enough water, I don't think you're going to get that much small filings into your other paints. And again, at this scale, at arm's length even, it'll be very difficult to see flecks of aluminum inside any other kind of paint. So I'll just briefly go over this. So these are wells. This is a Dollarama well, paint well, and I use this primarily with my speed paints. This is where I'll thin them a bit, or I'll pour them into here rather than putting them on my wet palette, which is over here. So that's wells. So it's a palette, but it's weld palette, I guess you'd call it. And this is a wet palette, and this I showed last time as well, but I'll show it again. So this is just a product. You can go online and find many people who've made their own, and for probably a year I used my own, which was just, you find some sort of foam material or just paper towels covered with parchment paper, and wet them down, and the idea is that the parchment keeps the paint from soaking into the absorbent material, which has the water. And the idea is that you can put your paints on here. So later on, we'll probably be using a little bit of yellow. You drop some paint there, and you can then get a little bit of water. I'm just going to pick up some clean water with my brush. You drop it here. I'll just drop it here. And then I could do a bit of mixing and thin it out as per most people. So I'm already finding I added too much water, so I'll just go in this direction. So I'm just working with it till I get a nice kind of, it's very hard to describe. People describe it like milk, like whole milk. So that might be a consistency you look at. And another one of your viewers commented about that this really comes down to practice, and it really does. you'll make heads and gain, like you'll gain quite a bit just by practicing. So paint a lot of figures, and I'll look at my older figures and shudder at how I do those. I shudder at the ones I do now because I still don't think I'm that skilled, but I've practiced enough that I can sort of flub it. So anyhow, this is a wet palette. So underneath this, this is a commercial product, but you can make your own. And I have nearby a spray, just a little spray bottle that I will spray in the corners every once in a while. It'll rehydrate the foam, and it'll kind of sort of keep the humidity high enough on the paper that the paint doesn't dry. So if I'm painting over a couple of days, I can come back to this and reuse that color, especially if you're changing colors. And so I'm just going to do a quick wash here. And so I'm just rubbing around in the soap. And again, that's just hand soap. I'll give it a little bit of wipe, and then in the clean water. And I form it back into a point, usually on my paper towel. So I twirl it to get the point back on. Because the big secret to painting is, you see I picked up a fairly big brush. The brushes I use, you will think, are way too big for what I'm doing. This is probably my number one brush here, which doesn't seem terribly small, but it's got a very nice point to it. So you're actually going to use the point of it the most. And that's where the details come in, is by being able to control the point. So when you're sitting on a wet palette, sorry, Ron, he's madly trying to do the camera work while I'm moving all over the place. So you pick up a little paint, and I did mention before, but I'll mention it again, never dip your paints right up more than halfway. You don't want the paint to get up into the ferrule, the metal part, because once that happens, your brush is going to go down a bad road, and you're not going to be able to use it after a while. So I'll even practice sort of just touching the paper, and if I can get a little bit more watery, and so I'm just trying to get the right consistency and the right feel to make these fine little lines. I'll show it to you. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't have moved.
It's okay. I'll just...
And yellow's not the best color, but I will use... okay, if you see, there's a bunch of very fine lines, a little bit of a glare there. So it's not coming out very well. But I'm sort of practicing right on the palette to see, have I got too much paint? Is it too wet? Is it too thick? And if I can get myself a nice line and then go, okay, now I can go onto my model, and I've practiced a little bit, so it's kind of like taking your practice swing in golf, and then you're kind of primed up to go. And I do have a smaller one. It's not much smaller, and I'm just going to form it into a point. And this one's, I've been a bad boy because I can see that the hair is splitting, and so there are ways to fix it. I'm not gonna go over it right now. So, two methods. I keep away from a palette for my speed paints, but people do use a palette for all their paints. I'm gonna go to the well, and we're just gonna try a couple of bits and pieces on these figurines here. I'm not as handy as Ron. I've been forever just shaking my paints, but I saw modelers on the University of Tube using different types of shakers, and this is a shaker that I bought off Amazon, and it's for nail polish, but it works. It works great for shaking paints. Here it's small, it's handy. I have it sitting like almost this close all the time. So anytime I pick up a paint, even the speed paint medium, should get a shake. And away I go. Okay, so you look at a model. Generally, it's a good idea to... Oh, that's... So another thing that really helps stirring paints, and the speed paints actually come pre-filled, is buy yourself some ball bearings. You can buy them very cheaply in larger amounts. And just open up these bottles and throw one of these in. It just makes shaking them up a little bit faster, a little bit easier, a little bit more thorough. Okay, so what I'm going to do is start with your light colors first. Generally, I start with the skin tone. And so I found in the past that this particular paint is a little bit quite orangey. And so I'm just going to put a couple of drops in there. It's probably, that's way more than I need. But I'm going to mix it with this speed medium. And I will put about, I'm going to go 50-50. So I'm just going to put a little bit more speed medium. And these swabs, I keep the picked off ones, so ones that have been used. They become perfect stirrers for things like this, and because they're kind of like a Nomar plastic, nothing really sticks to them, so they become quite useful. And I still think that's a bit too thick for me. It's going to be too vibrant. It would look like Ron Midsummer. So I'm going to put a little bit more medium. Midsummer outside, getting lots of rays, and a little bit too orange. Mix it up. Try not to use, I'm guilty of it too. Try not to use your brushes to do much mixing, because you're just going to push paint up into the ferrule. And always paper towel handy, give that wipe. Okay, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of paint off of this. And another thing is to test your paints. So I've got this figurine with a base on it. Well, I can practice on the base, and I kind of like that. That's coming the right kind of consistency. So we're going to go and just carefully, I'm going to pick out areas. I'm not going to go right to the face first. I want to make sure if I'm going to make a mistake or make it look ugly, I'll start somewhere where I can fix it up a little bit easier than on the face, which is everyone's going to look at. So I'm going to use the bare arms here. And they joke about these speed paints is you paint inside the lines. So it's kind of like paint by numbers. You don't go outside the lines, you stay where you are. And and then if here we go. I'm trying to get my bearings here. Okay, so I've touched up the forearms there, and upper arms, sorry. And now I'm going to just staying inside the lines. And it's okay to put quite a bit, because you want this to pool, and you'll see details come out. And instead of being one color, you get depth. You can go in and touch out some areas. Okay, I call this a thirsty brush. Take your brush and just touch it to a paper towel, and then go into the paint. And if you see his eyes are a little bit too dark, he is wearing glasses, but you can go and with a thirsty brush pick up paint. So if it gets too thick somewhere, you just touch your brush to a paper towel, dry it up a little bit, and then go back and touch, and it'll pick up paint instead of put down paint. So again, thirsty brush it's called. All right, so there we go. I'm just going to put a little bit more because I want a little bit more detail. And if we take a look, you can sort of start seeing that, okay, features are standing out a little bit more, and a lot more than if it had been painted in one color. In one color, you would have just seen just a mask look to it. Hey, so we got him out of the way. We'll pull up this other figurine here. I'm giving wrong conniptions because I keep missing my mark.
No problem.
You see, that's a pretty healthy sized brush, and I'm able to paint. You don't need tiny brushes, just good shaped brushes, and the pointed. So it's a round brush. If you ever purchase brushes, and the round brushes tend to have points on them. And this is a synthetic. You can use watercolor brushes. If you are really picky, the best ones are sable brushes. I don't feel like buying expensive Kolinsky sable brushes, or like the number ones. So, but some people do, and they swear by them. Okay, we'll go into here. And again, I'm not afraid to put too much because I can pick it up with a thirsty brush. So I do want to get some depth. Sorry, I'm thinking of me, not you guys. Now I'll go and take a look and see if there are places that are dark. I've touched my brush onto a paper towel, and I'm just going to touch up those just so they're not quite as dark. I do want depth, but I don't need eyeshadow. Hey. And as I mentioned, it's nice to have a couple of figurines going, because you can then just, while I've got the well mixed and everything, you can go ahead and do the others. And I was going to leave this one for Ron to paint in the method he chooses. Now, your Tamiya paints are perfectly fine on this. The primer I used, it was a Vallejo acrylic primer, and the Tamiya paints should go on that pretty easily. I think they'll work. So you don't have to go out and buy acrylics if you've got your model paints. And I have to say something else. Thanks to Ron. Okay, I build wooden models, but thanks to Ron, he inspired me to try plastic models. And I love ships, so that's how I found your channel. And so I've actually got lined up on my shelves several ships and plastic model ships. I've also got several wooden model ships ready to go. I decided I'm going to practice on an airplane model of a Mosquito from World War II, one of the finest Allied warplanes.
You were going to tell us a story about the...
Yes. So when I was in my teens, I primarily built plastic models. I didn't, wooden models weren't on the radar yet. And I built a Kingfisher model, and I really loved it, and I was quite proud of myself. I will say I was on my A game. I think it was about 15, something like that. And then I had this beautiful model painted up. I loved it. I actually hung it from the overhead light in my bedroom on a fishing line. And my sister, and I got to watch what I say here, because my sister had several friends who I have to say were not very smart, and they were over visiting, and they wanted to see if my airplane model could fly. And they launched it down the stairs. Mm-hmm. And when I came home, I think at that time I think I was probably at university, and my mom No, I was high school, and my mom came and stopped me at the door. Says, "Don't get mad." And I said, "What? Don't get mad." And she said, "Audrey didn't know." I shouldn't have said her name, but anyhow, Audrey didn't know that those planes couldn't fly, and she let her friends try to fly them. So I came home to a bunch of busted pieces of my model, and so I actually bought another one and rebuilt it, and she didn't throw that one. So that was that. Okay, so that's one paint. I usually clean up the well, so that was right away. The nice thing about these is they're very easy to clean. I'm going to pick up a little bit of soapy water here and just make sure that there's not too much residue there. And we can now pick another color. And continue or?
Well, we've been going at this now for what, 45 minutes or
yeah.
so?
So just a matter of keep going with the different colors. I've got the blue for Ron's shirt. I've got the gray blue or black blue for the jeans.
How long do you think it'll take you to do that? Maybe we should leave that for another episode.
Let's leave for another episode. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. So.
Okay, I think we're done for this episode. So I don't think I don't have anything else to say. So I think I'm just going to wind her up and say thanks for watching, everybody, and all being well, we're going to see you tomorrow.
Take care, folks.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Very welcome.